if you read the indictment against Donald Trump, and I've been reading indictments for 60 years. I'm probably as qualified as any human being on the face of the earth to understand an indictment. I do not understand this indictment.
Welcome, everybody, to Conversations That Matter. I'm your host, Alex Newman. Our guest today is Alan Dershowitz, one of the most celebrated attorneys in the world. He was the youngest full professor at Harvard University in their history at Harvard Law School. Now he is the Felix Frankfurter Professor of Law Emeritus. He's also the author of numerous best-selling books, New York Times #1 bestsellers. He's got a new one called Get Trump: The Threat to Civil Liberties, Due Process, and Our Constitutional Rule of Law. Alan, welcome to the program. Thank you so much for joining us. You say there's a threat to our constitutional rule of law. Are we in a very dangerous situation right now as Americans?
This is the most dangerous situation that I've seen us in since McCarthyism. I was a young man during McCarthyism, and there were great threats to our civil liberties, and we survived them because McCarthyism was a thing of the past. It was a throwback. Whereas the threats to our Constitution today are matters of the future. They're young people. They're people in college and in law school who don't care about the First Amendment, who don't care about the Bill of Rights, who don't care about the separation of powers. They just want to get Trump. They just want to make sure that the results that they set out to achieve can be achieved. The Constitution be damned. After all, the Constitution was a white supremacist, patriarchal, evil document, according to people on the hard left. So why should we care about that?
Yeah, that's a frightening prospect. What do we do about it? If the future lawyers, judges, legislators that are being trained up in the law schools now are hostile to our constitutional system, to the First Amendment, I mean, you're not a Trump supporter, and yet here you are defending the rule of law, the Constitution, and the First Amendment for everybody, including people you disagree with. What do we do with all these young graduates that are coming out of the law schools that don't see things that way?
Well, we teach them better. That's a hard thing to do because teachers lack courage. They don't want to be unpopular. Many teachers today in 100 law schools across the country belong to the National Lawyers Guild. National Lawyers Guild is an anti-civil liberties, hard left, formerly communist organization that doesn't believe in the Bill of Rights. For them, it's free speech, for me, but not for thee. I have a whole chapter in my book on the people on the left who are endangering civil liberties. I have an op-ed recently about what happened at Stanford, where the National Lawyers Guild headed a campaign to prevent a federal judge from speaking. Similar things have happened at Yale and at Georgetown and at other places. And these are our future leaders. These are our future lawyers. These are our future judges. These are our future senators, congressmen, and presidents.
Yeah, and it's very troubling. Alan, you dedicated your book to Harvey Silvergate. He wrote the extraordinary book, 3 Felonies a Day, where he shows that virtually every American is committing multiple felonies every day. On a systemic level, we're now in a situation, and I think this Trump prosecution is making that clear, where anybody can be targeted. What does that say for average Americans, and is it possible to fix this system? How do we do that?
Well, Justice Black, in a very important First Amendment decision, probably 80 years ago, wrote about a tyrant who wrote the laws so small and hung them up so high so that nobody could read them, only him. And so he could decide who to prosecute. And that's what we're doing today. If you read the indictment against Donald Trump, and I've been reading indictments for 60 years. I'm probably as qualified as any human being on the face of the earth to understand an indictment. I do not understand this indictment. I can't make heads or tails out of it. I can't understand it. I mean, my best understanding of the indictment is that if you're going to pay hush money to keep something quiet, then you better report it on your public forums as paid hush money to keep people quiet, which is the most insane thing I've ever heard of. That's the theory behind it. The second theory is that if you make a payment, and possibly in the back of your mind might be that 2-3 years from now, maybe you'll deduct that from your income taxes. And if that is improper, even if you didn't deduct it, if you thought about deducting it, that's a crime. I mean, that's the kind of thing that we're seeing today. And it vindicates Harvey Silvergate, and it vindicates Justice Jackson, the great Attorney General of the United States, who warned his prosecutors against rummaging through the statute books to target people, because any prosecutor can find something to pin on somebody if you look hard enough. The problem with the Trump cases, they looked hard, they labored, and they produced a mouse, a Mickey Mouse. They couldn't find anything. And so they manufactured something, made it up out of whole cloth. There's no crime in there.
Yeah. And in your book, you also go through a number of the prosecutions and targeting of Trump's closest allies, key people from his administration,
Yeah.
General Flynn, Mike Lindell, Peter Navarro. You look at these. Do you think any of these charges, any of these cases would have been brought if these individuals had not been associated with Donald Trump?
Oh, of course not. And the bar charges that are being threatened against me would never have been brought. I've been doing this 60 years, never had a single complaint, but suddenly I defend President Trump. And I'm a villain, and Project 65 is searching through every case I've ever had to see if they can find something that they can complain to the bar about. Fortunately, they can't find anything reasonable to complain about, but they're keeping to look, and they're going to look for everybody. And people don't want to defend President Trump because they don't want to be, quote, Dershowitz. They don't want to be subject to the kind of a program that I've been subjected to.
Alan, do you have any ideas for reforms? I mean, right now, Republicans control the House of Representatives. Republicans control a lot of states. Are there any reforms that could be made either to the bar or to the statutes, the regulations that would at least protect people in the future from this kind of targeting? Anything you can think of?
Yeah, and I go through some of them in my book, Get Trump. Yes, we can reform Bar Association rules. We can categorically state that no prosecutor is ethically permitted to target somebody, to first name the person and then go after them. No prosecutor is entitled to ever campaign on a promise to get somebody. We can do those things. Those are easy, and those affect both political parties, because believe me, there are going to be people on the Republican side who will do the same thing, who will campaign on the promise to get Hunter Biden or Joe Biden or Hillary Clinton. It's no better when it's done by one side than the other. So there are a lot of reforms. There are reforms that should not allow a judge like the judge who was assigned in the Trump case to preside if, in fact, the allegations about his close connection to anti-Trump activists is established. There are a lot of things, but will they be enacted? That's hard to know, but they should be. This case should be an object lesson for how not to do things.
Yeah. And so your book is rocketed to #1 at Amazon, but there are like independent local bookstores that are not carrying it. What's the best way for people to get the book, and why do they need to get it?
Well, they need to get it because it tells the whole story of what's going on with Trump, not only in New York, which is the weakest case, but in Florida, in Washington, D.C., and in Fulton County. And we're going to see those cases become headlines. So get ahead of the curve and read my book. Some independent bookstores won't carry it. I got an email yesterday from the owner of Shakespeare and Company, a small independent bookstore in New York, and she said, "Shame on us if we're not carrying it," and promised she would. So if you alert the bookstores, if you put pressure on them, maybe they'll do it. But in the meantime, you can get the book on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. It was the #1 nonfiction bestseller on Amazon, and that sends an important message. If you keep it on the bestseller list, it sends an important message to brag that somebody's watching. There is accountability. People are reading about this, and people will hold you accountable.
Well, Alan, really appreciate you speaking out. Again, I know you're on the liberal side. You're traditionally associated with Democrats. You're not a Trump guy, and yet you're speaking out in his defense, in defense of justice, really. So we appreciate you taking the time to join us and for speaking out.
Well, thank you. And, Donald Trump appreciates it. He's now written me two texts thanking me for doing it, saying my voice is important. He knows I didn't vote for him. He doesn't like it. He lectures me about that all the time. But he understands that you can have differences politically and still love the Constitution and love America, which I do.
Excellent. Alan, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on the program today.
Thank you.
All righty, folks. It's Conversations That Matter. I'm Alex Newman. Until next time, God bless you all.
Here's the news, Dad.
Is it, son? Is it?
What about this one, Dad?
Nope. It's hard to tell what's real and what's fake these days. There's just too much baloney out there. At the New American, they cut through the baloney and give me the truth.
The truth is hard to find, but the New American has it. Check it out at thenewamerican.com.